You are now tuned in to the Triple Threat Podcast.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining our first ever podcast, Triple Threat. My name is Ken Triplett. I'm here with Jordan Triplett. Jordan, what's up?
What's up?
All right, our first ever podcast. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and giving us a shot here. So basically, Jordan and I are just going to talk sports. We're going to talk about our favorite teams. We're big Buffalo Bills fans. We're big fans of the 76ers. Bills Mafia, that's right. So we're big fans of the 76ers and the Yankees and the North Carolina Tar Heels. So, hopefully we're going to bring some spice to your work week and also give you some things to think about regarding the world of sports, especially if you're a Bills fan or Bills Mafia member. We're going to go heavy into the Bills. They're off to a great start at 4-1 this year. Not anything that people thought would happen at this point in time because everybody was hopeful about one thing, the development of Josh Allen. What are your thoughts, Jordan?
I mean, I think Josh has really become a more refined version of still the same dumb decision making. Instead of taking a lot of deep sacks or a lot of deep balls every other player overthrows, it's more shorter dink and dunk plays, but he still has those long bombs. You're just like, what are you doing? I really don't understand the thought process with a lot of his plays. He wants to extend the play just a little too much. He's got to reel it in sometimes, and we can stay consistent and still win these games.
Well, you can kind of tell that he really is trying to find that happy medium between being that gunslinger that we can see that he is. He compares to Brett Favre. I had a thought earlier today that, at least early in his career, he's a little bit like Ben Roethlisberger. And that,
I don't know.
When you think back when well, think about it. When you think that when Roethlisberger first started in the league, he had a tremendous team that he came into. Obviously, in his second year, they went to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl because of that great defense. They had younger players at that point in time. I think Le'Veon Bell was a backup for that. No, he wasn't. I'm sorry. I take that back. But they still had tremendous talent on both sides of the football. And that team allowed him to really develop without a lot of pressure because they didn't ask him to do too much. The Bills a little bit different. There's a lot of pressure on him right now. But I think that his development it's buffered by the fact that the expectations weren't as great as they are starting 4-1, as opposed to, people expecting them to be maybe, 2-3 or even 3-2 at this point in the season.
I mean, I don't look at his situation as a Ben Roethlisberger because even still Ben put up some really good numbers and he was able to manage the ball a lot better than Josh. I would compare it more to Joe Flacco. He's got a lot more raw talent than Joe Flacco, but Flacco came into the same situation where he had this incredible defense with some Hall of Famers on the other side of the field, and all he was asked to do was manage the game until that one playoff run where he really showed his true talent, but he hasn't gotten back to that peak at all. And he definitely was not that player in the regular season.
So let's talk about the Bills and expectations coming into training camp. I know I, for one, had the Bills at 8-8, maybe 9-7, and really kind of hinged on the development of Josh Allen. But I don't think anyone thought the Bills' defense was going to be as good as they've been so far. So it's been a pleasant surprise about how more rounded the team is.
I definitely saw that defense being top 3 since last year. Nobody on that defense really changed and really made it hard for us besides losing Kyle Williams. But I know everybody's definitely picked up the slack, and you have seen that with guys like Jordan Phillips. He's been disrupting a lot of plays, and I saw this defense from a mile away. I don't know who else was paying attention.
So what's been
to
the difference?
league.
So what's been the difference between this year and last year?
I don't think there's too much of a difference. We were still number one in defensive pass yardage, or rather total yardage, actually, for much of the year. I think we finished number two, but it was definitely at least top five for defenses as far as that goes. And then we had Ed Oliver on top of that, still disrupting plays. And we have cornerbacks. We just brought in, what's his name? Taron Johnson, I believe. Or is it
Taron
Taron?
Johnson.
Yes, Karan.
Taron or Tehran, I'm not sure.
Tehran. Either
Hasn't
way,
played
we got
yet,
him
I'm
in
not
there
sure.
as a good nickel corner. We're getting a lot of good play out of both corners, really, out of the starting spots. And then we still have the best safety tandem in the league. So I definitely saw this defense from a mile away, and they got that piece they needed, and that was really Oliver to make the thing go. And the linebackers also progressing. That's another step that really helped them out.
Well, so you lose a almost a perennial Pro Bowler in Kyle Williams, and then you replace him with a rookie with tremendous upside. So that's one of the major changes and differences. Ed Oliver's been really good. He obviously has not reached the level of a Kyle Williams yet, but he's been disruptive. He's been handling double teams. He's been close to getting his first sack just about every single game. So he's doing everything that I think the Bills are asking him to do. But I still think there's a slight drop off, at least at this point in time, just from the experience between himself and Kyle Williams. So you take a look at that. But, some people could say maybe it's a schedule. The schedule obviously is a bit easier. Well, a lot easier than last year, especially the first 5 games. You look at the next 3 games. The Bills have the second easiest schedule in the NFL, and the Patriots have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So you got to do a lot of noise when you have that benefit of beating teams that you're supposed to beat, or at least being competitive against a lot of the teams that you face on your schedule. And to me, I just think the difference is attitude. I think, obviously Josh Allen is better than he was at this point in the season last year, obviously, because he's learned a lot more. The running game with Frank Gore has been outstanding. Last week, we witnessed the 4-minute offense and the Bills executing that to perfection, which is something that we're not used to as Bills fans, putting games away, even though that was a nail biter. But doing that, just the little things, I think, has been something that's made them win the close games instead of doing the Bills type of thing and blowing these games.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, especially about the easy schedule. But this is still the same Bills team we've watched for quite some time. They're young, but they're definitely growing and learning how to win. But they definitely can't take anything easy in terms of this upcoming schedule. I'm really especially scared about this Dolphins team, a 4-1 Bills team off a bye week against a winless team. That sounds like a game that Buffalo would lose the past 20 years. So
I'm definitely not going to give up 17 points. I'm definitely not going to give up 17 points and put any money on the Bills covering that spread at all.
Yeah.
But I do expect them to win, though. But you're right. This team can't afford to have the feel or the attitude that they've arrived yet, because they haven't.
Yeah, it's only been 5 games. You really haven't won anything. There's no ring that you get after 5 games. There's no special participation trophy. You definitely got to win out for these easy games. You've really got some easy games on the schedule. Dolphins twice, Redskins as well. You got the Broncos up there who aren't doing too well. You still got the Jets. Who knows what their season will look like towards the end of the year. A lot of winnable games upcoming that they really do need to make sure they're consistent on and consistently bring that effort and energy they have had all year.
Well, let's talk about the Dolphins game coming up, Jordan. Obviously, the Dolphins are winless. They're hapless. They are definitely tanking. Obviously, the players that are on that roster aren't tanking, but the ownership and the administrative staff, they've made it clear that they've gotten rid of all of their top flight talent for the most part, and that they're rebuilding. So you've got a home game. You're coming off a bye. You're feeling good about yourselves, and you have Vegas has you as a 17-point favorite, which is insane for this Bills team. I'm not used to that. So it makes me a little wary. I agree with you that, I expect them to win this game, and that's it. I don't care if it's by 1 point, just win the game because, again, this team hasn't quite put together a full game. I would like to see them do that, though. I want them to put together a full 4 quarters of solid football.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of room for error in a Dolphins game, but not as much room just because it is still an NFL team. You really can't just slack off there and just give up easy possessions and easy points just because they're coasting through the whole game.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got the Bills doing well right now at 4-1, as we talked about. And now let's take a look at this point in the season, since the bye week is now past us and we're heading down the last 11 games, of the Bills' schedule. Offensive and defensive MVPs for the Bills. Jordan, I'll have you start with your offensive MVP so far for this team and what that person's done for the Bills at this point.
Offensive MVP. I mean, I would really have to give it to Frank Gore just because even without Singletary, Frank Gore has definitely held it down at that running back position.
Frank the Tank.
Oh, yeah, Frank. Absolutely. Yeah, Frank, he's really on pace for 1,066 yards. He's really not going to get it at all. Just because Singletary will come back and those touches will have to be split up. But to have a 36-year-old running back, an all-pro, future Hall of Famer guy step in and take that role and not show a step of slowing down at all, not a single sign of it. Still running that football for us, especially keeping the turnovers down as best he can with this offense that we've thrown, 9 picks this year. So definitely want to keep that ball moving, keep the chains moving, and he's been keeping this offense afloat when Josh just makes those bonehead decisions.
Well, I definitely think that Frank Gore is an excellent pick for offensive MVP for this team. He's really carried the Bills at times when the Bills have needed him the most. But I want to go slightly off kilter just a little bit. I'm going to go with John Brown. I think John Brown has really been the go-to player, the go-to receiver for Josh Allen. I believe he has the most first down catches and the largest yards per catch for any Bills player on that team. And I think that, he's really opened up things for at least the passing game, which can continue to get better and better as Josh begins to play better, basically, and gain that experience. So I think John Brown, sneakily, if that's a word, has really been someone that the Bills can count on and rely on, just like Frank Gore. And for me, he's been my offensive MVP for the Bills. Now, let's talk about defense. A lot of players could be selected, a lot of candidates on that defensive side of the ball. What you say?
Well, I brought him up earlier, but I have to go with Jordan Phillips. He really filled in for our injured man with the ACL. Harrison, that really hurt us, but he's really stepped up in a big way where he's still disrupting every play that he comes across, rushing through that line. He's taking up a lot of double teams and freeing up our guys on the edge like Shaq Lawson for a few sacks here and there. He's definitely doing well for us and really filling that hole there. In terms of just that hole that we have with run defense, because we already know we do have the best pass defense out there with the best safety tandem and very strong corners. It's the run that really gets us, but he's really been stuffing a lot and helping us out.
I agree. I think your pick of Jordan Phillips is a really good one. He had a monster game against the Titans last week with 3 sacks, and he's done really well for the Bills. He's in a contract year, which is something that has definitely helped his cause so far. So if he can continue his play the way he's been playing at that defensive tackle position, he's going to get paid and everybody's going to be happy. But I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. I'm going to go with Tremaine Edmonds, who's had a really good year so far. His pass protection, his pass coverage, I should say, has really stepped it up a notch from last season. And in the NFL these days, for middle linebackers, it's not so much about the number of tackles. It's not so much about run stuff anymore. It's about pass coverage because of how many times that ball goes in the air during any given NFL game. And Tremaine Edmonds has done a great job manning that middle, being the quarterback of that defense, the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL. And this kid's only in his second year, and he's only going to get better. So to me, Edmonds is a guy that you have to look at as being the defensive MVP for this team so far.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely see him getting that award just because he has covered the field a lot for us and maintain that hole in the middle of the defense, making sure we don't get dinked and dimed up the field.
All right. So let's talk about, again, going back to the Miami game. How about some predictions? Again, the Bills are 17-point favorites heading to the Dolphins game. What are some of the keys that you're looking for in this game? How do you expect to see the game unfold? And what's your final score?
Look, Miami, they don't have a defense. Let's just get that out there. I expect their first turnoverless game of the year. I think this step is definitely a good point for them, proving that they really are contenders if they can go up against a bad team and not win by the skin of their teeth and not throw 3 picks that keeps the Dolphins in it somehow. They need to show that they are strong in this game and continuously just beat that spread. If they beat the spread, that's perfect. But because they do need to show that they are here for real, rather than just all talk, or rather than just being a hot flame in the pan right now, a hot flash in the pan.
So how do you see the game unfolding?
I actually see it unfolding more of a 24-14 kind of win. That'll start off a little bit closer for comfort, but then I do think by the end, they'll have to get it together in terms of not being conservative, because they always start out these kinds of games conservative with the play calling, and in the second half, I do believe it'll open up for them.
All righty. Yeah, I think that's a good score. I think that the Bills are going to try and come out and really just set the tone early offensively. And they've had 2 weeks to game plan for a really bad team. And if you can't come up with a good enough game plan to beat this team, then you really should not be in this league. I think Brian Daboll's play calling has driven me nuts so far this year. I definitely think he's had his moments where I just have to scratch my head and think, what the heck is he doing? But you're getting players back healthy. Singletary's going to be back. I believe that Tyler Kroft, the tight end, is going to be available as well. So maybe we'll get to see what he can do. I think Daboll is going to really open this offense up. I think you're going to see a lot of trick plays. And I think you're going to see them really go for it. So having said that, it's going to all come down to execution. They can't get too hype or too ahead of themselves. Defensively, I'm not worried at all. I don't care who's going to be the quarterback. I don't care if it's going to be Josh Rosen or Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't think it matters. They just don't have any weapons to go up against that Bills defense. So I'm thinking the Bills do score about, I'm going to go 27-13. So they win by 14. They don't cover that 17-point spread, but they do enough to send a message that says, hey, we are a team, even though we beat a winless team, that can, definitely take care of our business and move on to the next week. So I'll go 27-13 Bills, 27-13 Bills in that one. All right. Let's move on to the NFL. Jordan, there's been a lot of league parity in the NFL, at least in my estimation. A lot of teams that are either 4-2 or 3-3 that are right in the middle that could go either way as the season unfolds. So right now, what would be your sleeper teams? Those 3-3 or 2-4 teams that, when you look at their schedule, really give you pause for concern regarding the Bills in the AFC.
In the AFC, I would have to go with a sleeper team of mine being the Indianapolis Colts. They really did have an incredibly strong roster. People forget Andrew Luck had a great year last year, but this was still a very strong roster with guys like Malik Hooker on the defense. and they got Marlon Mack running the ball. They really do have a Super Bowl level talented team. And Jacoby Brissett, he's still a quarterback that finds a way to win. As we've seen so far, nobody's really checking for them right now just because they did lose Andrew Luck, and the Texans are on top of the division right now, especially after the statement when they just had over the Chiefs. And nobody's really looking out for the Colts. I'm really scared of them taking a wild card spot away from the Bills. I'm scared of them more so taking a spot than I am a team like the Cleveland Browns or a team like the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, Cleveland looks bad right now, admittedly so, and I'm really tempted to pick them as a sleeper team. I know they're 2-4, only because their schedule after week 8 really gets really easy, and it really opens up for them. So the question is, by week 8, will this team still be a team? Because right now you're starting to see cracks in the locker room, and maybe their coach Freddie Kitchens is going to be on the chopping block a lot earlier than realized. But if they can keep it together, I think by week 8 they can begin to make some noise as long as they stick together in that locker room. But having said that, I think the Oakland Raiders are a sleeper team that you have to be concerned about out west. They are 3-2 at this point in time. They've played really well. They've played really good defense in their offense with Josh Jacobs, the rookie, and Derek Carr playing decently. They've surprised a lot of people, including myself. So I'm going to go with the Raiders as a team that Bills fans need to really keep an eye out for regarding any potential wild card spot moving through the 2019 season. All right, Jordan, it is now time to play buy or sell. This is a segment we're going to do fairly often on our podcast here, Triple Threat. So I'm going to give you some names, and you're simply going to buy the person or sell the person in terms of their overall worth. All right, so we're going to go quarterbacks. All right, buy or sell Kyle Allen.
I am absolutely selling on Kyle Allen.
Really?
Kyle Allen hasn't been asked to do that much. Christian McCaffrey has really been doing a lot of heavy lifting on that offense. The problem with the Cam Newton offense, while they started out so bad, Cam Newton wasn't running or anything. There was no threat of that. Cam was missing a lot of open throws. Looks like due to injury, because we've seen Cam Newton at a high level. There's a lot of throws he just missed those opening weeks. And this offense has leaned more on their talent left. That's Christian McCaffrey, and he's having an MVP-like season. And when your running back is in talks for MVP in the NFL in 2019, I don't think we can credit the quarterback too much, because MVP is almost specifically reserved for quarterbacks these days, the way they throw for 6,000 yards, and they're so integral to the offense.
Well, I get your point. I mean, I'm definitely buying Kyle Allen at this point. And the reason why I'm buying is, right now, there's a lot of talk that, maybe the Panthers should trade Cam Newton or at least cut him and take the cap hit because Kyle Allen makes nothing. So you take a cap hit, but at the same time, you're paying his replacement nothing. And one of the reasons for that is that when you look at the film, Kyle Allen is a lot more accurate than Cam Newton on the intermediate throws. Cam is good with the deep ball. He hates to check it down, but even though he's been doing that a lot more lately, especially with McCaffrey. But there's a reason why Kyle Allen has been moving the ball a lot more consistently than Cam Newton. It's because of his intermediate passing game and his accuracy. So there's maybe a little bit of chatter about the possibility that, Cam may have lost his job or, especially if they can find a taker in a trade for him. But I'm definitely buying Kyle Allen at this point in time.
I mean, I still don't know about that. I just don't see it in the guy. I mean, he's just an average kind of quarterback to me in the sense that he comes from an air raid offense and all he's asked to do is make these quick throws and these shorter throws. And a lot of it really is just built off of Christian McCaffrey and all the other talent around him. I'm pretty sure that they are looking at moving Cam since he even if he doesn't play up to par of his MVP season. I think the injuries scare the Panthers more than anything. So I could definitely see them keeping Kyle Allen for a cost-controlled and healthy quarterback replacement instead of having an ugly breakup later on with Cam Newton.
All right. Well, let's move along here. Let's go on to Gardner Minshew. Buy or sell?
For Gardner, I would say right now buy if I'm the Jaguars. It's going to be really hard to get rid of that Nick Foles contract, and you really might not get rid of it. And it's a really good problem to have two good quarterbacks on the roster at the same time, especially when your backup would be Nick Foles in this situation, a very expensive backup. But definitely either way, Gardner Minshew has made a lot of big plays for this Jaguars team. They're not looking too good in the standings right now, but it's by no fault of his. He really stepped up and came out of nowhere as this guy that's leading them to a lot of winning plays. It's just that they do have to finish it off, and it is a team effort out there.
He really has. And, he appears to have that it factor, at least right now. But I think I think he's a flash in the pan. I don't think his style of play is sustainable. I think that a lot of what he's getting away with is that there's no book on him right now. He doesn't have any tendencies. But each week that he plays, each film session that he gives defensive coordinators makes it easier for them to game plan against him and take away his strengths. Once they begin to take away his strengths, it's like, okay, Gardner, what's your backup plan? Once you get punched in the mouth, what's your backup plan? And at this point in time, again, there's no book on him. But for each week that passes, that book compiles more and more information on how to beat the kid and how to stop the kid. So I just think it's a temporary thing. So I'm definitely going to sell on Gardner Minshew because of that. All right, well, let's see. We got time for one more. Let's talk about a veteran. How about Phillip Rivers in terms of how he's played so far this year? Buy or sell?
For Phillip, I would say sell in the sense that not sell right now. They definitely have to get a quarterback waiting in the rafters to replace him. So they might want to look at draft options this year. And it really may be the fact that they could end up tanking unintentionally this year and lucking into a high pick to get a quarterback. But Phillip Rivers, he reminds me of if all the big name quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, and Carmelo Anthony would be, I don't know why I said Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony would be my Phillip Rivers in this situation, is what I'm trying to get at. Peyton Manning would be my Kobe Bryant. Tom Brady is my LeBron here. Big Ben would be the D Wade of this sort of comparison. But Phillip Rivers is hitting that mellow stage where he's just like getting a little bit older. He's still putting up the numbers, but it's definitely not leading to any wins. It's not, it's just not the same as it was about 5 years ago when he was putting up these numbers and having 12 and 10 win seasons. And even in a couple years ago when he had 10 win seasons. But right now it just looks like he's slowly starting that deteriorating process that we've been expecting from this class of quarterbacks. So it's definitely coming for him before Tom Brady and Ben and even Drew Brees.
Well, what is the old adage? Better a year too soon than a year too late. And I think that's where the Chargers are with Phillip Rivers. I think it's best to kind of plan to replace him a year earlier than a year too late, because he hasn't had the best of seasons so far. He's really not been the Phillip Rivers that has been able to really lead that team. Right now, I believe they're 2-4. They're really underachieving. They've lost some close games, but at the same point in time, those were the games that Phillip Rivers usually pulls him out of, and he hasn't been able to. I would definitely sell on Phillip Rivers. I agree with you 1,000%. Look to the draft in April for his replacement and begin to build forward, moving from that point on. All right. Since you mentioned the NBA, Jordan, it's time to talk about the NBA. The season's going to start fairly soon. Very quickly, we're getting to our NBA preview. And there's been a lot of discussion, probably the best offseason the NBA has ever had. Just crazy. And taking a look at, since that decision was made by Kawhi Leonard, all the ripple effects and the dominoes that fell after that, the landscape of the NBA has changed. So let's talk about the top 6 teams that really have a legitimate shot at winning it all this year. What are your top 6 teams as we talk about our NBA preview?
Top 6 teams. I really don't think there's too much argument to be said about these top 6 teams. I do think it's a widely held belief by everybody that's following basketball right now. Number one would be those Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two all defensive candidates at all times, two all NBA talents, two MVPs candidate for last year at least. Paul George, I believe, finished number 4, and Kawhi Leonard was Finals MVP. So two guys that can really take over any game on the same team with an already established bench and roster and established coach. There's a lot of things going well for them in that organization right now. And that will be not my number one. Number 2, I would go with my Philadelphia 76ers. I don't see too many teams matching their length on the court. And defense is really the name of the game this year. The Clippers and the Sixers will absolutely have the 2 best defenses all year, with the Bucks in there floating around as well. They still do have Giannis. But the Sixers, they have a lot of ways that can beat you. It looks like we can play the slow and the fast game now, depending on what lineup we decide to throw out there, what works best. We do have a lot of guys that can just have the hot hand and carry us those games. Ben Simmons is always improving, and he's already an all-star talent. So definitely my number 2 team. I don't see anybody beating them besides the Clippers. That's the team I'm most scared about. Number 3, I would still have the Lakers up there. Anthony Davis, it's really understated how good at the game of basketball Anthony Davis is. Able to put up numbers that we really haven't seen before. Able to have the range and the skill set from a guy that big that we don't really see outside of guys like Kevin Durant. And he's on the same team as LeBron, one of the greatest to ever play the game. And even without too much of a bench around them or too many other guys, I do believe those two are more than enough. They've both led teams to great distances on their own. Anthony Davis less so, obviously. But I definitely would watch out for that team just because of all the talent they do have centralized in those 2 men. So number 4, I would have to say, the Milwaukee Bucks, just because, again, defense being the name of the game here, they will put up a top 3 defense along with the Clippers and the Sixers. They still do have Giannis, the MVP. I do see losing Brogdon hurting them a lot this season. Eric Bledsoe, he's great in the regular season, as we always see, not great in the playoffs. But definitely, I would still have them up there, just not up to the level that they were last year with that big hole left by Brogdon. Number 5, it was really a harder decision for me between either the Warriors or the Rockets, just depending on how both those teams come out this year. With the Rockets, I would put them at number 5 just because they clearly still have all those pieces centralized there that they've been having chemistry with for quite a long time. A lot of guys know their roles and know their game really well. James Harden and Russell Westbrook, 2 high usage players. We don't know how they're going to fit yet. Nobody really does. Westbrook can do a lot of things that you really want him to do on the team, but in reality, it just doesn't happen. You want him to play great defense because he's so athletic, but it just doesn't happen a lot of the times. James Harden, he puts up these great scoring efforts until you need him in the playoffs when he has 13 turnovers. So it's just a lot of questions with that roster, but I do give them the benefit of the doubt over the Warriors just because they will have Klay Thompson coming back at the All-Star break just about. He'll be a little bit rusty and maybe not up to form in terms of what we're used to seeing from him. I do believe Steph Curry will have an MVP-like season, probably win the MVP overall, just because of his high usage rate and his efficiency. But even without Klay and Draymond and D'Angelo, there's not much of a roster around them, so I would put them lower than the Rockets, but it's just a two teams of what ifs at 5 and 6.
All right. So very quickly, you've got the Clippers at 1, the Sixers at 2, the Lakers at 3, the Bucks at 4, the Rockets at 6, and the Rockets at 5, and the Warriors at 6. Right?
Yes.
Okay. How about your MVP winner? Who's going to win the MVP this year?
Stephen Curry, easily. He's gonna put up those numbers from his first MVP season. Not exactly a second. I don't think he can reach that peak, but definitely from that first MVP season where he was just catching fire and putting up a lot of those 40-point nights at the end of three quarters, or just a lot of those 9-point three-pointer games, just because he's got the ball so much and he's asked to do so much, and that system was made for him, and they still will find him a lot of shots in that offense.
All right, absolutely. That's a very good pick, and I'm gonna give you my top 6 very quickly. I'm gonna go with the Clippers at number 1. You know, for everything that you mentioned, I just think the Clippers, not only with just Kawhi and Paul George being an incredible two-man tandem, I just think they have a lot of bench that's going to help them in the playoffs. So I think that's going to be very helpful. They're going to play good defense between obviously George and Kawhi Leonard themselves, but they've got Montrezl Harrell. They've got some players that can really bring it defensively. And again, I think their bench is going to be the difference maker for them all season long, including the playoffs. Number 2, I agree with you, my 76ers. They're going to the finals this year. I'm going to speak it into existence. They're definitely going.
Yeah.
And their defense alone, everyone's going to talk about their defense, which is, well chronicled in terms of their potential. But their defense is going to lead to a lot of offense as well. Just from the few preseason games I've seen so far with this team, the defense is really leading to a lot of easy fast break points for guys like Ben Simmons and Josh Richardson and youngsters like Matisse Thybulle, who can score easily in transition. This is a huge team, and their defense is going to carry them. They're going to get transition buckets that they didn't get last year, which is really going to be a big difference maker for them. So I think they're going to surprise a lot of people about their ability to defend the rim, take the ball away, and get easy buckets in transition. Not to mention their half-court offense, which is really going to get better than last year. So look for Embiid to be an MVP candidate. Once again, he's going to go for it for sure. I don't think he's going to win it. I'll give you my MVP candidate in a minute. But after the 76ers, I've got the Lakers at 3. Obvious reasons. LeBron and AD. I don't think they have the bench to win it all, but I think they can make it to the Western Conference Finals. Number 4, I've got the Bucks. For obvious reasons, the Bucks and the 76ers will be your Eastern Conference Finals matchup. The Rockets at number 5 for me, and I'm going to go with the Warriors at number 6. My MVP, I agree with you 1,000,000%, Steph Curry. He's going to have the freedom to go off this year. KD's gone. Klay Thompson's gone. He obviously is going to be asked to carry the keys to the kingdom throughout the regular season, and he's going to go for it. He's going to go off, and he's going to be that guy that's going to average between 35 and 38 points, I believe, per game. That's going to put him in that MVP category discussion immediately and throughout the entire regular season.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And for Steph, I really do see another record broken. He probably will break Klay's 3-point record that they keep going back and forth on. Definitely seeing Steph Curry not make it too deep in the playoffs. I could see them somehow upsetting the Lakers if they happen to meet in the playoffs as a 2 and 3 seed in the West before those conference finals. But it does depend on how Klay looks when he comes back, and also how D'Angelo Russell fits into that offense.
Absolutely, absolutely. All righty, we're about to wrap up our show, our first episode of Here Triple Threat, with what we're going to do weekly. As often as we do the show, it's called the Dummy of the Week Award. So I want to play you guys a very brief clip of our good friend Jason Whitlock talking about the China controversy and people like Steve Kerr who did not give enough resistance to his liking. Let's play that clip.
Yesterday, Golden State Warriors coach Steve Kerr responded to the mocking criticism President Donald Trump directed towards him for his refusal to comment on the China controversy engulfing the NBA. Kerr expressed shock and disappointment that Trump called him out.
It was really surprising, but mainly just because it was me, and then you stop and you think, well, this is just every day. This is just another day. So I was the shiny object yesterday. There was another one today. There'll be a new one tomorrow, and the circus will go on. So it's just strange, but it happened.
What Kerr fails to acknowledge is that he is part of the circus too. He has not been a spectator. He's acted as a lion tamer, trolling President Trump at the behest of fawning media and social media apps rigged to reward anyone willing to go tweet to toe to tweet with the president. Kerr thinks his brand of trolling is superior to the president's.
Yeah, that's our good buddy Jason Whitlock with Fox Sports. He gets my Dummy of the Week award only because I just can't take the hypocrisy of media types like Jason and others. You see the comments on Twitter and other social media platforms about how everybody's so upset with Steve Kerr and now especially LeBron James with what they've said about China and that they are obviously siding with communism because they haven't come out fervently against what's going on in Hong Kong, and everyone's disappointed. Listen, how many American companies are investing in China right now? The hypocrisy about, whether or not these guys should be speaking out is palpable. The shut up and dribble crowd, these are the same people that have been telling LeBron James to shut up and dribble when he wants to talk about social injustice issues in America right here. But now they all of a sudden want him to speak out against a complex and it is a delicate issue over in China. So I think the guys like Jason Whitlock, who's, expecting these guys to, be the only ambassadors to coming out against what's going on in Hong Kong, while they sit back and basically say nothing themselves and don't take a stand about anything regarding anything, and just tired of it. So Whitlock gets my Dummy of the Week award. There you go, Jordan. What do you have?
I have to go with Adam Silver right now. For so long, we've had this image of Adam Silver that he's also helped portray that he's this super progressive sort of commissioner, that he's a little more holier than thou compared to other league commissioners. I'm sure every league commissioner would probably have done the same thing he did. And that's actually the problem. I see Roger Goodell also just saying, okay, let me make my money move before we do anything else, before we make any statement. But for so long, Adam Silver's like, we love when our players express themselves. And they had this whole thing with the shirts that they put out for NBA equality and all this stuff. And it's not a bad message to have. Obviously, every league should have that message. But what we're seeing more is Adam Silver be a more average owner, or rather average commissioner, in a world where all our commissioners are not meeting that level at all. And Adam, he put out this statement at first about the league that was very vague in terms of what he meant. A lot of word salad, a lot of just nothing in this statement that he first put out when this Morey situation happened. And then later he further doubled down on that nothing statement that he made just about the league and how he support everybody's right to express themselves. But then on top of that, he's running around the corner and be like, okay, what he said is not affiliated with us. Please give us our money. Yeah, you have your say, whatever. Okay, what really matters is what I say.
Absolutely. So a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the world of sports. It's a very, touchy issue that's going on in China and Hong Kong and the NBA's connection to them. But, we'll see how that thing unfolds. Well, thank you, everybody, so much for listening to our first episode, our first podcast of Triple Threat. We'll be back next week with more on the Bills and how they did against the Dolphins, and then their upcoming game after that against the Philadelphia Eagles, which will be another big game for the Bills. And we'll continue to talk about the NFL and other things going on in the world of sports. Opening weekend of the NBA is coming up. So that's going to be exciting as well. And we just want to thank you guys for listening and hope you come back next time. Peace.